Everyone knows him, everyone loves him, and he is the other iconic face and mascot of the entirety of the Medarot franchise, finally getting his turn on the tune-up treatment. It is KWG01 Rokusho, REGRADED, with a kit of radar sight, sword, hammer, biped legs, and the leg ability of Charge Fight, which buffs the success and power of equipped melee parts upon a certain Metaforce threshold being maintained. Now, when it comes to conventional and balanced combat as a melee fighter, Rokusho, and for the most part, and by extension, most of his other family mates of the Stag Beetle series, are generally models you can never ever go wrong with using. But it was Rokusho who started the trend and maintained the standard. Radar Sight is a support-based skill that, once activated, will buff the success of himself and all allies by 30%. And in addition, will also negate any conceal or stealth effects of the enemy's side. In addition to this, it is also worth noting with success that it's not only tied to your likelihood of landing hits in general, but it's also tied to your likelihood of landing critical hits on top of that. So this alone already puts Rokusho off on a very solid foot as someone who very likely will have a very difficult time having of enemies dodging or grazing his blows once he gets a chance to have that skill activated. Right Arm of Sword is a conventional and balanced melee skill you can never ever go wrong with using for its incredible balance and versatility and well-rounded stats across the board. With no major drawback or penalty to using it, it's a very flexible part that you can use basically anywhere. Hammer also is a very conventional melee skill that is a full AoE, meaning it will damage all the active parts on a target, as in active as in not broken, and spread the damage evenly among them. So while it's not good for dedicated damage, it's very good for peppering the foe to set them up for, say, Sword to come behind and finish the job much faster and more efficiently. Biped legs do also guarantee that Rokusho has very solid coverage across most terrains very, very well, and compared to Metabee, who tends to focus more on versatility and for the most part kind of being your all-round tank more and a dedicated all-rounder, Rokusho and most of the Stag Beetles in extension following him tend to focus more on speed and agility more than dedicated power. But that does not exclude Rokusho from being able to have access to strong attacks or nuke skills all the same. The Charge Fight ability will come in handy very much so for him, given that it will buff his likelihood of landing hits and his base damage once he can maintain a certain Metaforce threshold and keep it throughout the duration of the fight. Now with his tuned-up treatments, much like Metabee, Rokusho basically takes everything he already had up to this point and just kind of upgrades and expounds on it to make himself already better than his already good kit was before. His head has access to plus 300 to armor, plus 200 each to heat and cool, and Radar Sight can have access to a plus 100% additional bonus to success when activating the skill. Now normally success by Radar Sight by itself will grant a 30% buff, which means with this upgrade active, it will be a supercharged Radar Sight at a whopping 130%. This means with this kind of buff and effect active, not only are all your hits guaranteed to land no matter what, but it's honestly going to be a blue moon kind of situation for a hit to not be considered a critical hit on top of that. So naturally, that Radar Sight bonus would be your absolute go-to and must-have. Heat and Cool honestly is very nice as well, as it means that Rokusho can fire off and activate this skill very quickly and very easily without anything coming up behind him to, say, interrupt him or outrun him. But if you feel that he has that department nailed down pretty well, you could honestly go with the extra armor with your remaining points and really not go wrong either direction. His right arm of sword has access to plus 400 to power, plus 150 each to heat and cool, and damage plus grants him an additional 30% damage bonus when triggering pierce damage. Now, very similar to Metabee's rifle, Rokusho's sword will basically behave the exact same way. That being said, the damage plus bonus and the base power bonus will be the two really big ones you want to focus on, as this will be Rokusho's primary form of dealing damage, and this is the one that you want to have and give the most consistency to. Heat and Cool are nice to have, but when it comes to the base power and the damage plus, it really is no contest which ones are actually worth going for with your remaining points. Left arm of Hammer has access to plus 300 to success, plus 400 to power, and damage plus gets an additional plus 200, which means that when spread loading the damage, it will be just a little bit more painful than it was before. So naturally, much like with Sword going for base power, going for power and the damage plus will both be skills that you really want to shoot for to maximize every use of his Hammer Fist if you do end up having to get up close to use it. His legs have access to plus 150 to mobility, plus 500 to his shoot resist. Charge Fight gets a minus 25% charge reduction requirements in order to activate the skill. And also like Metabee, he also has access to gain S rank on prairie and on arena terrains. Now, much like Metabee as well, the mobility bonus is going to be very highly sought after, as Rokusho already is pretty moderately well-rounded, and with his mobility in his, say, low-mid 700s, he is already fine as it is, but that extra 150 will give him just that extra edge he needs to keep up with the big dogs that are currently ruling the ongoing meta in competitive leagues. Charge Fight bonus also is very nice to have as well, as it means he'll have a much easier time activating that extra bonus to make use of, instead of having to waste a turn charging Metaforce just to activate it. Whereas instead, he could simply dodge or graze a skill, depending on the metal that he's using, or even just attack on his turn, in order to activate it even easier than that. Shoot Resist is very nice to have, as it will kind of round out Rokusho's kind of damage reduction from incoming shooting skills. But honestly, between that and mobility, I would honestly go with the higher speed in my personal opinion. Terrains also are nice to have, but that extra 10% or so really isn't enough to be considered game-breaking compared to the other effects and bonuses that Rokusho has offered to him. That being said, rolling back and recalling his original pure set and mixed parts scores, for his incredible balance and versatility as a conventional and well-rounded melee fighter, I did have to rate him a very solid 7 out of 10 across the board for both his pure set and his mixed parts scores. Factoring in his new upgrades that he has access to via the tune-up system, I very easily, without a doubt, have to maintain that equal grade with a very solid 8.5 out of 10 for his pure set and his mixed parts score. He's very good to newbies, he's very good to veterans, and when it comes to serving as your all-round melee fighter, or even a nuker possibly in some cases depending on how you build him right, Rokusho for sure is a Stag Beetle that will never ever fail you.